Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk about the absolute state of Star Wars canon. And while there are many examples of how Disney is destroying the lore of Star Wars, I would have to say that the absolute pinnacle as far as the destruction of canon is concerned has to come from the High Republic comics. I wouldn't even consider the sequels to be as bad as these comics as far as the lore is concerned. And while I could point to at least one good comic book series from the High Republic timeline, that being The Blade, it is far from enough to make the rest in any way acceptable. Now, I've already covered numerous times in the past some of the various flaws within these comics, such as the fact that the very first issue of the very first High Republic comic made it so that the Jedi were not only villains, but bigger villains than even the Sith, to the tune that they would actively put entire planets into danger just to test their Padawans. I've also pointed out in the past some of the atrocious dialogue as well, such as Jedi being made to say things like, "Nobody expects you not to feel the way you feel," or, in a more recent example, "We're all allowed a bad day," that latter being a case of a Jedi commenting on the fact that an individual that is a Force user is actively setting protesters on fire with the Force. I've even talked about how the writers have been forcefully inserting their own politics into the lore of Star Wars in ways that make absolutely zero sense, such as Cavan Scott creating Space Jerusalem just so he can talk about how evil Space Israel is against the Space Palestinians. And yes, that is an actual thing within the comic. In fact, even looking at just the latest issue of the High Republic comic book series, there is plenty to complain about. But if I were to have to pick a crowning achievement, at least in this latest issue, to demonstrate just how far gone modern Star Wars is as opposed to where it once was, and how little some of the writers in charge of these comic books actually know about Star Wars, it has to be this image of a Jedi Knight shouting, and I quote, "To hell with the Force," while choosing to put on a Sith artifact after he had just witnessed it corrupt someone else. Now you might be sitting there thinking, okay, but he just got corrupted by the dark side, except even the Sith would under no circumstances say, and I quote, "To hell with the Force." They might instead say something like, "The Force is mine now," or "unlimited power," but one thing that they would never say is "to hell with the Force." It completely goes against their philosophy, just like it also completely goes against the Jedi philosophy. Now, I do need to mention that this is, by the way, something that fellow YouTuber Osmegon did bring up during our recent live stream of the comic, so I am, of course, going to give him credit here for pointing this out first. And also to address the elephant in the room that many of you may have already noticed, yes, the Sith artifact is basically the Infinity Gauntlet, and yes, the characters in the comic find it in one of the dumbest ways possible, as the character that first got corrupted by it is beaten up and happens to land right in front of the thing. In other words, this magic MacGuffin effectively appeared right out of the ether as far as the story is concerned. In fact, I run the risk of going on to a tangent over that as well because, like I said, there are just so many things to complain about with regards to this comic, as well as so many ways to complain about each and every single one of those things that these writers got wrong. But you want to know what the worst part is? It's the fact that the fake fans who think that the sequels are utterly above criticism will still try to defend this. They'll sit there and try to claim that there is nothing at all wrong with the Jedi Knight shouting, quote, "To hell with the Force," even under the circumstances in which he did that, because the people defending this are not real fans of Star Wars. This is a classic case of why gatekeeping is so important these days, because failure to gatekeep your fandoms will result in stuff like this. It's honestly so bad that what Star Wars needs at this point is a proper reboot, because the current official canon is just so badly screwed up that there is no salvaging it. Of course, for a reboot, you'd also need people that actually know what they're doing to be in charge of the writing. Now, the good news is that with Disney doing as financially poorly as it is, what with 2022 being an awful year as far as their films are concerned, and with the tide of the culture wars being slowly turned against the woke crowd, it's not entirely out of the question that Star Wars may one day get a reboot, with the current official Disney canon going the way of Ghostbusters 2016. And frankly, should that day indeed come to pass, then all I have to say is hopefully it comes sooner rather than later. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.